Welcome to the beginner guide to machine learning. In this tutorial, we are going to make a foundations for machine learning. Especially, we'll start with how to set up your programming framework for machine learning. So, in order to begin or start with your machine learning applications, you need the following. You need to choose a programming language, and Python is widely chosen and accepted, and is the current state of the art programming language for machine learning. You could also do in MATLAB, but I think Python is more agile and has more flexibility and rich community. And you also need to choose the code editor. There are multiple of them. So for example, for Windows users and for Mac and for Debian, everyone, I think Visual Studio is the popular one where you can install a lot of dependencies. And for machine learning platform, you need to have TensorFlow and PyTorch. TensorFlow is from Google and PyTorch is from Meta. And you have to have a number of dependencies. So for example, NumPy is used for numerical manipulations. That means you can factorize, or you can use matrix multiplications and matrix operations using NumPy and many more. And you also need to have matplotlib and seaborn for visualization, pandas for data analytics, scikit-learn for machine learning applications, scikit-image for image processing, opencv and pillow also for image processing, and tensorflow-datasets to import the vast number of datasets that TensorFlow allows the coders or the applications user to use them for free. So we need to install all of them. So let's get started. So we start with installing Python. So to install Python, you have to go to Python release version here. If you go to Python downloads, then the current version is as of today, that's recorded on 19th of July. So it's 3.11.4, but we want to go a little older, and we would be using 3.10.1. So it's here, it's 6th December 2021. So we're gonna use this for our tutorials and for upcoming sessions. So when you click on this, it will take you to the release button, and then you can just download it for Windows or for any other packages, and similarly for Mac or Linux. So we install this. So I already, when you click it, it will take you to download. I already have Python downloaded and installed on my computer. So when you click it, it doesn't give me the option to install. So but if you do that, you will get an option to install it. So once you install it, so once you have installed your code, so then you download it and then install it. So remember to add it to your Python. So and click for all users. So if you don't add to the path, it's gonna be a problem. So I would suggest that it's highly recommended, or at least please follow along this tutorial. So just add it to the path, and then you can close it. So you have your Python installed on your computer. And once it is installed, where is it installed? And that's important to keep the path. So that's installed on app data local program Python 3.10. So I will keep the path in the description so that you know that where it is installed. And this is important to know because it's important to know where the path of your Python is, because if you have multiple Pythons, they will be installed here, and you have to choose which Python do you want to use. And if you don't know the path, you cannot choose them. So it's important that you know the path of the Python and come and choose the Python version that you want to use. For example, if you want to use Python 3.10, you would come and choose this file. If you want to use Python 3.8, you would come and choose this file. And if you have multiple versions of Python, so each time you want to use a specific version, you want to use that. So after you have installed your Python, so it's time to install vscode. So similarly, if you could go to visualstudio.com.download, I already have downloaded that, and if you use it, so just accept and next, and remember to click off all these 4 because this is important. If you don't click it, you lose some functionalities. Just click all of them and then next and then cancel, but I already have installed it, so I just cancel it. So you just choose it and then you go next, and then you will have your TensorFlow Virtual Studio installed. So once it's installed, then you would want to go to Visual Studio Code. So you would want to see if it pops up here, that means it's installed. So now we have installed our Python and Virtual Studio, and now we want to install TensorFlow. But before installing TensorFlow, it's important to note that we wouldn't want to install TensorFlow globally on the computer. So we want to make an virtual environment. And why is that important? Because specific machine learning applications require specific packages and the version of the packages. For example, you might need some older version of your Python. So for example, you might need 3.8 for a particular application. So you make a virtual environment with this Python and this version number for your application. And similarly, you might need TensorFlow datasets of a specific version for your applications, and lots of other dependencies. So it's good to have your if it's good to choose to collect all those dependencies and the specific version number on your together, and then for the application. And once you change your application, if you want to have another application, so make another virtual environment and install all the dependencies, and so that it's localized only to that environment, not globally. And that is the way to go. So first, before installing TensorFlow, let's create a virtual environment first. So and to create a virtual environment, I do the following. I have a master folder, Python virtual environment, where you install all the dependencies. So for example, this is my parent folder where I have all those virtual machines. So I have 1 2 3 virtual machines here, so virtual environment, and I would like to create one more. Then I create everything here, so that I know this is my parent folder for virtual environment. So let's go to the parent folder. You can choose whatever you want. For me, it's Python venv. So you could choose anywhere on your C drive and make a folder Python venvs, and then right click, choose open with code. So I just try to close everything. This is coming from my last my previous session. So I just close everything, and this is what a Python Visual Studio Code looks like. So first thing, you would want to install Python dependencies. So just type Python and install these dependencies. Although there might be more, but I would suggest you to choose this, the first one that pops up, because it's downloaded 91 million times, and this is more reliable. I already have my extension here. If you don't have it, you would get an option to install it and install it. So once you have installed it, then you are good to go now. So I just close it and I go to the Explorer. So we don't have anything now. So I would suggest you to open a new terminal, and it's PowerShell, and we would want to change it to command. I prefer using command. And then you have this. So far you don't see anything because you don't know what version of Python are you using or what is that. So Control Shift P, then you get your create Python environment, Python launch, and TensorBoard, and all those things. So it's just like select interpreter. So you would want to choose what interpreter you want to use for this particular session. So I choose, but for me this is default, but I would like you to do the following. So I have set it 3.10. so go to find and give the path where your Python folder is installed. So it's installed in this path. So choose this and choose Python. So now the VS Code knows what interpreter to use for. So we can create one new file, Python file, and this is just to check the right version here, because this version doesn't show up if you don't use a file. So just create a dummy file to see that, okay, I'm using this version. But I would, like, although it says 3.10 is chosen here, but I would want to be very sure, because this is where the error happens, and I would want to double check that I am choosing the right Python. So I'm choosing the right Python. Yes, now I'm using the right Python for this. So now I would want to create a virtual machine. So I would go to the folder, my parent folder, where I have list of all those virtual machines. So it's here, Python virtual machines. I would copy this and go here. So now I'm in my virtual machine, parent virtual machine folder, and I would want to create a virtual machine here. And the command is Python let's give a name. So let's give it a name. I'm creating a virtual machine, and this is the name. So far, if you see in my computer, I don't have any virtual machines here. I don't have any virtual machine named 512. So I don't have any virtual machine named 512 2023 autumn. So I'm just gonna create one using 3.10. And this is important to show the path, because if you just make a mistake here, you are not going to install it using 3.10. It will take a while, so I'll be back when it's done. Yes, now my virtual environment is created. So let's go to the parent folder and see. Yes, we have our virtual environment created. So what I do is that if you go to the virtual environment and check, so you see your Python version 3.10.1. If you don't see 3.10.1, there is an error. So just be sure that you have this error, and it includes home, and this is the path where your Python interpreter is. So once you have checked it, it's fine. Now you are ready to go. Now you have to, the next step is to activate this virtual environment. And how do you do that? So inside the script, you have this activate. So you want to activate this file. So go to virtual environment. So you go to the so I went to the inside the scripts file. You have this activate. So you can just type. So what I'm doing here is that I'm going inside this autumn script folder. This is the newly created virtual environment. If you go inside scripts, activate. So you just have to activate this file. And this is what I'm doing. So once you activate it, so now you have this activated. Normally when you activate it or when you make it, VS Studio will ask you to change it, but for some reason it didn't show up, so you have to do it manually. So right now we are here at 3.10.1, so we are not in the virtual environment any so far, so we have to choose one. So it doesn't show up here, so you have to find the interpreter path manually. So copy the path of this python exe that's in python this virtual environment scripts python exe. So just choose this path. So now you know, now we are using 3.10.1 and this is the virtual environment. Now we are good to go. So you have created a virtual environment and set up a virtual environment. Now we are going to install TensorFlow on this. So to install TensorFlow, so we are going to install TensorFlow version 2.10.1. So 2.10.1, and I would suggest that to go along with the codes, just follow the version that we are going to use it, because there might be some conflict with a particular version of the Python and TensorFlow and the dependencies that we're gonna use it in the future. So I would suggest that you go along with me. And before installing, you should be in your virtual environment and in your virtual environment here, and this also should be a virtual environment, so just check it before you install. So it would take a while to install this, so until it's done, I'll pause the video and then I'll be back when it's done. Yeah, during the installation process, it's a wise to look into what are the packages that TensorFlow installs. For example, it installs NumPy, that is widely used, so you don't have to install it yourself because it's already installed here. So I would suggest that you don't install NumPy because it has already been installed by this version of TensorFlow. And then we have TensorFlow IO file system, TensorFlow estimated TensorBoard. This is used to see your loss curve during machine learning. We will see in the class or in the future tutorials. And we have H5PY. H5PY is used to save your machine learning model that you would want to save it and then use for inference. We will also see the example how to save the model and then reuse them in the future class. And then we also have TensorFlow already installed here. So these are the things that has been installed using TensorFlow 2. And we also have installed this protobuf. Protobuf is a protocol buffer that's used especially with YOLOs or different models, that is used to make bounding boxes and pass those bounding boxes to your API, and this is where protobuf uses. So these are the things that get installed when you use install TensorFlow 2. So it's still in progress, and I'll be back when it's done. Yes, we already have installed our TensorFlow, so ignore the command, ignore the warning, because it asks me to update pip, but I can skip it for the moment. But for the coder, as long as you have warning, you are fine to go, unless you have an error. That is where you have to look into. So now we have our TensorFlow installed. So let's see what we can do is that what I prefer, especially with this TensorFlow, because this is the first thing that we installed and we want to know that it's done. Although it says that it has installed TensorFlow 2.1, it has installed TensorBoard 2.10.1, and what I want to look into it, the version of the protocol buffer 3.19.6. So you see, so these are installed. So now I would want to check it really what is my version and how do you, so you want to import. Yeah, so just save it and save the file in the mass512 autumn. I would like to save it inside this folder, although you can save it anywhere, doesn't matter, but I will want to save it here because so that it becomes easy to run. and I give it a name, test.py. So I would want to save it here, test.py. So you see here, you could choose this file anywhere, because I prefer inside this virtual environment so that it becomes easy for me to install and run, because now this file is in this path here, so that I don't have to change the path every time, and I can just install and check it. So we print sorry, yeah. So if it's installed properly, then control S. Yes, one thing with vscode is that you make changes and you have to save it. It doesn't automatically save it, so every time you make changes, make sure that you hit control S, and we can just see python test.py. So if this runs, our TensorFlow is installed properly, and it will just ignore. So this message tells you to ignore the, because I don't have a GPU on my machine. You will have GPU machine on your NVIDIA when you will have projects with mass 513, or if you have an NVIDIA, this wouldn't throw up an error, but I don't have in my computer. So yes, now we have this 2.10.1 version installed here, so we can just now so we have installed our TensorFlow. So next thing is to install other dependencies. So we installed TensorFlow, so now we have other dependencies, so we will install them one by one. Remember, NumPy already installed in TensorFlow during installation of TensorFlow, so we don't have to install them, but we will have to install others. So it's install. So we would want to install matplotlib. So it will take a while, so while it's installing, I'll pause the video and we'll be back when it's done. But before that, it's good to see that, like when you install matplotlib, it installs pillow. That is one of those things also to be installed, pillow and counter pys. Yeah, so pillow is already installed, so numpy pillow is already installed now. So if you see here, numpy is already installed, pillow is already installed. So you would want to look into that. Okay, while installing one packages, other packages are also installed, so you would want to take care of that. So once we install this, so we install seaborn. So we install seaborn. So again, when you install seaborn, your pandas is now installed, so you would not want to install pandas again. And while it's installed, while it's getting installed, I'll be back. I'll pause the video and I'll be back. Yes, pillow is seaborn is installed. So now let's install sci-kit learn. Again, when you install scikit learn, scipy is installed, because scipy is the base for scikit learn and scikit image, because this is the core package, and based upon scipy, scikit image and scikit learn, these are evolved. So one is used, scikit learn is extensively used for machine learning applications, because it has lots of algorithms like clustering, regressions, train test split, and so forth. to that we can leverage for our machine learning applications. So while it's installing, I'll pause the video and okay, so it's done. Yeah, so now we can install pip install sci-kit image. So when it installs sci-kit image, it also installs spy wavelets. So wavelet transformation is it's a transformation that converts a time domain signal into a spectral domain, into time frequency domain. So we might look into some of the applications where we can see how these wavelets can be used to convert a time series data into spectral domain, save it as an image, and do the classification on that image. We will see that in the future tutorials, but it's important to know that when you install sci-kit image, PyWavelets is also installed so that you can exploit PyWavelets for the application. Yes, so far I think everything is ready to be installed. So we have import TensorFlow, and now we can see import numpy as mp, import sorry, before that we also have to install opencv. So we are going to install this particular version. Why? Because if you look into the opencv release, the current release is 48074, but I prefer to use a bit older, this one, so 2022, somewhere close to 2022, so that it doesn't conflict with other dependencies. So it's just matter of choice. You can try other, but I would suggest that you stick with me during this course. So we install this. Yeah, so now you already have installed now, so we can import our packages that we have installed. So we have numpy, import. We would want to have cv2, import pillow, sk image. So this is for machine learning, and this is for basics for everything, for matrix manipulations, and these are for image processing. Then we can go to scikit-learn for machine learning applications, import pandas as pd for data analytics, import matplotlib.py as plt. Is it and then we have import seaborn, control s matplotlib dot. I'm a bit confused about is it a matplotlib pyplot. Pyplot as pyp. Yeah, so consider all these applications that will be useful. So a good idea is that whenever you start an application, just import all these things so that you don't have to install it again when required. So if you install all these things for most of the machine learning applications, you would be fine. So now control s, and I would run this. So python Yes, so everything is fine now. So you have your these packages installed correctly. So 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 far now we installed everything that we required except TensorFlow dataset, and this is required to import TensorFlow datasets from the from TensorFlow that has built-in packages for datasets of a specific version. So that's 460. So we don't want to install the latest version because it might show some error depending upon the TensorFlow, because we are using TensorFlow 2.10, that's older, and we want to use also the older version. So 460, this has worked with me. Oh sorry, double equal to. So while it's installing, I'll pause the video and try to see. Yeah, so we already have this installed now, 460. And yeah, so maybe we can try to see. So Control S, and then we want to save it. Python. It threw an error. So it's just because of the protobuf. It looks like downgrade the protobuf package to 3.0 or lower. Yeah, so so what we have to do is that pip show protobuf is, so the protobuf, you see now there is a conflict between a TensorFlow dataset and protobuf. So we require protobuf, and it's 423 now. We want to install less than 20. So pip install protobuf. So choose any version that's less than 3.20 as mentioned here, 3.20 or lower. So I have chosen this version because this has worked for me. Yeah, now there is another error. So now there is another conflicting thing between TensorFlow metadata 131. So you see here, TensorFlow datasets require protobuf less than this one, but if you have this, it's conflicting with metadata. So it requires metadata 323. So this specific version of TensorFlow metadata package, TensorFlow metadata package of version 1.13.1 require protobuf that should be greater than 3.2.0. But if we have greater than 3.2.0, our TensorFlow is not working. So let's downgrade this. So pip install TensorFlow metadata 110. Yeah. So now, yeah. So now it's done here. Yeah. So now I think you can install. We can try to see pip so TensorFlow datasets. Yeah, now it's installed 460. Yes, so now I think if we save it and then run python test.py, it says that just to ignore the message because I don't have GPU on my computer, and there is no error. So you have installed this TensorFlow datasets. So this is how you can install all the packages. I think all the packages were successful. You could create, only the conflict is between TensorFlow datasets. There is some error, I mean somewhere some patch has been remained that has not been updated. So but looking into the error, that how one dependency is dependent upon other, and how to play with that specific version number, you can install that. And that is why you should install all these things in a virtual machine, so that one package doesn't conflict with another application. So once you have installed it, and then we are good to go with our applications. But before ending, I would like to also have an interactive coding here. So Jupyter something like a Jupyter notebook version in the VS Code. To get that, select some line of code and run in interactive window. Select line interactive window. Connect into kernel. So just install that. So I'll just pause while it's installing, and once it's installed, we will see how to make use of Jupyter notebook. Yes, now it's installed and we are connecting it to our kernel. Yes, so now there is no error. And what we can use this interactive video, interactive Jupyter notebook is the following. So you have a main IDE here, main space to write your code. You have the terminal to install and to run your program, and you also have this interactive where you can just see what happens for functionalities very quickly. Say you have an array. So you define an array, and then you would want to know what are its shape and what are its first element, how to get its first elements, for example. So something that you are not sure of, then you can just quickly check here. Okay, so this is how things work. So if you want to find first two elements, so what is the code for that? So A, so first row. So this will basically give you the first row and first element, first row and first column. So basically this will give you zero. Sorry, this will give you the value of the 0th position. So it's 1. So if you want to find the first two elements, then it's 0 to 2. So that means 0 and 1. So 2 is not counted. So it gives you first two elements. 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, so this is how you can just quickly check the functionalities, and then once you are confirmed, okay, this is the way to go, so you can write it here and then you can run it here. So yes, this is how things work. So you have your explorer here, which file you want to have it. So you import all your dependencies here in this main space to write the code, and this interactive window just to check if you are confused with some kind of code, and you have your command window to see. And then another good option is here that you know the output here. So yeah, Jupyter, you see a Jupyter. So whatever the variable is that, you can look into these variables, and we will still look into this output in the future versions, in the future tutorials, how to make use of all these things. So that's for this tutorial. So now what we saw was the following. We learned about of installing Python in our computer, and installing VS Code, installing TensorFlow, and then dependencies, so that we have our framework ready to make applications, and that we will see in the future versions of our tutorials and in the class. So thank you.